So I don't know what to tell you guys. I thought we'd have a new Yahoo board by today, but we don't. It's still the same old board. Please direct all inquiries to Dan Titus. That's at Dan Titus on Twitter. New board's coming when the new board's coming. We thought it was coming over the weekend. It hasn't apparently been pushed out to public yet. And when it does, we will dive into that immediately. It did give us time to get you the Pacers and the Bulls breakdowns over the weekend. And it gives us time to get you 51 through 75 today. That's what's going on this episode of Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. I am Dan Besbris. You can follow me on Twitter at Dan Besbris, DanBesbris. Follow the Old Man Squad Network on Twitter at Old Man Squad. Cleared 1,000 overnight last night. That's actually very exciting for me because the only thing that comes out from that network typically is episodes of our shows. And when I say our, I don't mean this show. I mean all the shows on the network, which is now 1, 2, 3, 4. There's like a dozen, 13, 14 shows on Old Man Squad and more coming. There's one debuting as soon as potentially tomorrow. Very exciting. I don't want to give anything away. That is another gentleman's special prize to alert you all of. And so, yeah. Please do take a moment to like, rate, and subscribe here at the front end. Every single time you do one little thing in that regard, it helps us get our word out about Old Man Squad. Many of you continue weekly right now to be like, Dan, what happened? How did you end up over here? I'm here now. Not a Sports Ethos anymore. I'm with Old Man Squad. So please help get the word out by liking, subscribing, all that good stuff. So more folks can find the new home for Dan. 51 through 75 is on the docket today. We've talked about not this most recent Friday, but the previous one. We did the first 25. Early last week, we did 26 through 50. And today we get into arguably my least favorite 25 chunk on this first Yahoo board. Now, I'm fully aware that as the board shifts, what chunks of players I like and dislike will also shift. It just so happens that right now, and I don't know why I have Jalen Duren highlighted. He's number 50. We're starting at 51 today. It just so happens that right now, this grouping, for reasons I can't fully explain or understand, has, in my opinion, the worst selection of draft day values on the board. Let's go through and talk about why. We'll start at 51. We'll work our way from 51 to 75 one by one. Perhaps the new board will be up by the time we finish talking today. But in any event, Miles Bridges is number 51. I've said it before. I'll say it again. Miles Bridges is a player that I would just rather not have on my fantasy team. I don't care if you prefer. I won't judge. If you have no issue with having him on your fantasy team, that's totally fine. At the same time, I just believe that we collectively here on Old Man Squad together, you guys are extraordinarily sharp listeners, maybe the sharpest. We can win without him. There are plenty of other dudes on the board, not to mention the fact that as great as Miles Bridges was last year, he finished at number 57 in 9-cat on a per-game basis. It was a good year, for sure. And when he was getting drafted near 100 last season, he was a value. But being drafted at 51 the year after being number 57 in a season that largely featured no LaMelo Ball is a stretch. If you're looking at Miles Bridges' numbers and you're actually just trying to evaluate him aside from any of the extracurriculars, your hope with Bridges is that field goal percent ticks back up a little bit. Remember, he was at 50 and then 49% the 2 seasons before he got suspended for a year. The biggest difference 2 years, that's 3 years back now, was that he only took 9 shots a game that season. So efficiency was a lot easier to come by because he could select his shots better. This last season, his effective field goal percent was just worse. 2-point shooting percentage was worse. 3-point was pretty much where it always was. So you could look at Miles Bridges and you could probably make an argument that the field goal percent could come back a little bit. That's the way that he would climb from where he was to someplace higher. But it's also hard to envision a scenario where Miles is getting 18 shots a ball game again if the ankle brace edition of LaMelo Ball is healthy. Because, I mean, if you look at, the Hornets, we did a Hornets breakdown a couple weeks ago on the show. If you look at the Hornets last, 2 months of this most recent season, Miles Bridges took 17 and some odd shots a game. Brandon Miller took 16, and then nobody else was over 9.7. That, by the way, was Grant Williams, because Terry Rozier was gone. By the way, he still is. So you got Brandon Miller on the rise. You got LaMelo Ball coming back. You've got Mark Williams, hopefully upright. He should be somewhere in the 9 to 11 range, I would think, if he's playing starters minutes out there. There's just not as much for Bridges to do. And not that his value is solely tied up in usage, but being a 20-point per game scorer, that was where a lot of his value came from. Season blocks were fine, not spectacular. Rebounds was another positive for him. But, free throws, very small positive. I just think it's, even without the I don't really like Miles Bridges stuff, I still think it's too pricey. It's fine. He's not going to ruin your team from there, but I don't know. Let's just go a different way. Rudy Gobert is the next one on the list at number 52. This is also, by the way, slightly too expensive for Gobert. I did admittedly end up with him in the mock draft that Josh and I talked about on Friday's show, and that I went over earlier on Friday, talking kind of about everybody's picks. But also, that you'll be fine with Gobert. In fact, the second half of this recent season, Rudy was number 27. 27, guys, in 9 category leagues. He was number 50 overall on the year. So drafting him at 52 is just a very safe place to plop a Rudy Gobert. He obviously gets better anytime that Karl-Anthony Towns is out. That's part of what you saw. He averaged 35.7 minutes per game, almost 36 minutes a game in the second half of the season. He was at 34 the first half of the season, and some of that was the Cat stuff. But presumably, Cat will be healthy to start the year, so you'll get a Rudy that's probably near 60 to 70 range. And then there will be stretches where he's in the 40s and he'll bounce around, and he'll be a very safe pick who you know exactly what you're going to get. This is a totally fair place for Rudy to be pre-ranked. I don't expect him to move that much. Derek White is number 53 on the pre-rank board, and this is very much a we don't believe he can do it again kind of ranking, because White was number 28 last year as one of the biggest values on the board. Averaged 15 points, 4 boards, 5 assists, a steal, over a block, 2.7 threes, and he did it on pretty damn good percentages. 90 from the free throw line, 46 from the field is pretty good, especially when you consider that more than half of his shots were coming from three-point land. Only 1.5 turnovers. The issue, so let's start with the good. The good, obviously, is that Derek White had a fantastic season, and he's an unbelievably versatile player that people are sort of now exposed to for his goodness on a basketball court. The bad with Derek White is that his team just won the finals, so he had to play a whole lot of basketball there. He also played in the Olympics, so he didn't really get any break in July. And admittedly, the Olympic schedule is not super grueling. The travel part isn't the easiest, but they're playing once every 3 or 4 days for the most part. So the guys are not getting worn out. He also came off the bench and he was playing whatever it was, 18 minutes a ball game. So I don't think the Olympics is really wearing these guys out, running them ragged the way the playoff run did. But when guys go to the finals, you typically want to see them recover. And he didn't get a recovery period. So if you're worried about Derek White, that's probably the reason to be worried about him. Is there going to be some sort of downtick in how many games he gets into, minutes he plays, whatever? The good, of course, is that Kristaps Porzingis is out for half a year. Now, Porzingis took 13 shots and 5 free throws last season. That's going to get redistributed among Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Drew Holiday, Derek White for the most part. The other starters that Porzingis would have been playing with, probably a little bit more for Al Horford. You give 1.5 give like 2 shots a game to the big guys, 1 shot to the little guys, and sort of fill out the edges there. And more usage is a damn good thing for Derek White because he's super efficient. You want him doing more stuff. I don't think we see too big of a drop off for White. I think people just aren't that excited about him because he's so roto-y. He's such a prototypical roto 9-cat player that someone's got an early 5th round pick in a head-to-head league. They're still looking for somebody that's going to fit their build. And Derek White quietly fits every build on earth because he's league average in scoring. He's league average in steals. He's slightly sub-league average in rebounding, but for a guard, 4.2 isn't bad. He's slightly sub-league average in field goal percent, but he's a nice positive in free throw, assists, threes. He's a big positive in blocks. He's a monster blocks guy from the guard position, and all that equates to a 3rd-round value that, again, despite that massive year, is still going in the early 5th. So you probably have sort of a quietly solid built-in. It's very Mikal Bridges Phoenix edition-esque, where people were drafting him in the 60s, even though we knew he would just quietly roll into the 30s and 40s and play most of the damn ball games. I don't have the same confidence in White's durability this year that I would have had in, well, Bridges any year ever. But it's that same phenomenon where he doesn't score that much. And the guys that don't score that much, that go in the 4th and 5th round, tend to be big men. I mean, I can scroll up the board and show you just, those that are watching on YouTube, you see it. Let's see who in the, this is the 31 through 60 range that we're looking at on Yahoo. The only guys in this range that don't score, I mean, I'm going to say Bam Adebayo scores plenty. The only guys in this range that don't score a lot would be Jared Allen, big man. Can we say Jalen Williams doesn't score that much? What was his number last year? Where are you at, Jalen Williams? You were 40-something. He was at 19. I mean, that's enough to say that he scores. So I'm not even going to put him on that list. Miles Turner at 17. Could we say he doesn't score that much? Big man. Jalen Duren, big man. Gobert, big man. And Derek White, not big man. So he's the anomalous one here. People are totally willing to take a guy who doesn't score a ton if they're getting, 10, 11 rebounds a ball game. People are much less willing to do it when it's not a big dude because there isn't that overwhelming elite category. Derek White doesn't have a hyper elite category. He's just good at everything. If you're not a big scorer, but you're good at everything, people kind of overlook you. So I like Derek White in this range. I think he's totally reasonable. I would do it. Immanuel Quickley is number 54. We probably got to get moving a little bit faster here. For Quickley, you can look at what he did the last 2 months, but also it's important to note that Jakob Poeltl, Scotty Barnes were both out basically the entirety of that stretch. RJ Barrett missed about half of the last 2 months. And so Quickley took 16 shots a ball game and had 8 assists because he was the point guard. I don't think he's playing 35 minutes and taking 16 shots with 8 assists this coming year. I think I'm going to say jumped the shark a little bit on Quickley. I just, to me, he strikes me as one of the, much like, unfortunately, Jalen Williams, who I love with the warmest corners of my heart. We are hyping these guys a lot. I haven't hyped Quickley quite the way I've hyped Jalen Williams, but you've heard a few folks come on the podcast last week that were really into Quickley in the 50s, and that now is starting to make me a little bit nervous. My feeling, I mean, obviously he's going to be way better than the New York Knicks version of Immanuel Quickley. I just think you're going to see something maybe a little bit more akin to his numbers over the last 3 months of the year. So that and I know that includes time that wasn't with Toronto. But there's these pieces for Quickley that I got to be careful how I talk about him because it's going to sound like I'm down on Quickley, and I'm very much not down on him. I'm just worried that if we draft him at 50, we wipe out a lot of our opportunity. And he was with Toronto for basically half the year. Remember, that was a trade, if I recall right, that was a trade that went down a couple weeks before the deadline. Overall, with the Raptors, Quickley averaged 33 plus minutes per game, a little under 15 shots, 6.8 assists. So 19 points, just under 7 assists. That was the numbers for Quickley. 0.9 steals, which again, he's not a big steals guy, so you should probably assume something between 0.8 and 1. 1 is attainable. He's a good free throw dude. He is a bad field goal percent dude. That's just kind of who he is. He strikes me as like a little bit more assist-friendly shooting. And we've talked about this too on the over the weekend. These guys that have the shooting guard fantasy stat set, and Quickley is like shooting guard adjacent in his stat set. I think, at least in my eyes, one of the big bumps in assists was because Scotty Barnes went down, because he was the point forward on that team, and he and Quickley were going to sort of be splitting that role. And when Barnes went down, it all became Quickley. Again, he was about 8 assists per ball game after Barnes was gone, and he was more like 6 per game when Scotty in the brief games that they were able to play together. What did this switch make? I think they traded him like right around the turn of the year. So it wasn't even a few weeks before the deadline. It was like a month before the deadline. And you can look at the numbers. You know, the assists were obviously significantly higher in Toronto than they were in New York, but things really clicked as his time in Toronto rounded out. So if you're looking at 6 and some odd assists instead of 8, call it 6.5. I mean, if you want to even go up near 7, that's pretty damn good still. Is he going to average 20 points per game with RJ Barrett floating around? I mean, there's no Gary Trent now, so that helps a little bit. Close. 18, 19, 20 feels attainable. And so these are good numbers. 19.7 assists. That's a great fantasy line. And he's going to hit 3 threes a ball game because he's chucking away from down there. He's in a positive at the free throw line. How high does that get him? 40s? Dude is averaging almost 6 rebounds a game over those last 2 months of the year. That's another thing that I think you can point at and very easily say, yeah, that's a bit of a byproduct of what was going on around him. He's likely to be more in the 4s, not 6. So there's a lot of stuff that was a little inflated for Quickley over those last 2 months. Not hyper inflated, but enough to where, you know, that put him in the late 20s, early 30s range. How much does the peel off in scoring, assist, rebound? That's the big 3. How much does that take away from him? 1 round? Does that push him to the late 30s, early 40s? 2 rounds? Does that push him down to his ADP? Probably not much farther than that. And so that's probably the argument now for Quickley, is that, you know, even an okay season for him probably gets him to around 60 to 65. Anything better than that, and he hits his mark. So Quickley in the 50s, I think, is relatively fair. You're starting to see him push a little earlier, and I'm pretty concerned that the next board reshuffling is going to really knock him up, but we'll see. Nick Claxton at 55 is totally fine. I'd be a little bit worried about Brooklyn turning some bodies off down the stretch this year, but Claxton is probably going to be somewhere between 35 and 75. We just sort of don't really know where, largely because we don't really know what his free throw number is going to look like. Is it going to be 45? Is it going to be 61? Is he going to average 2 blocks a game this year? Will his minutes get up and over 30? He's not a guy I'm targeting this range. I think we can do better, frankly, by waiting around, because there's some centers around later, like 2 rounds later, that could put up, I think, similar numbers at a cheaper draft day price. So I'm not super high on Claxton this year at 55. It's probably not a target for me. DeMar DeRozan at 56, I'm very much fine with that. DeRozan last year was awesome. He was number 31. He's not going to get 17 shots in Sacramento, but take him down to 15. And he's still very much a top 60 type of player. I think DeRozan is a very safe pick in this range. And I don't think we need to go too far down that rabbit hole either. Zion at 57 is also, believe it or not, a relatively fine pick. He was number 109 last year, but you're likely not drafting Zion if you're hard attacking free throw percent. So if you're in on Zion, I'm assuming that you've probably decided not to care too much about foul shots, and he's inside the top 50 if you're punting free throws. If you're trying to win free throws, this is probably too early for Zion because he was number 109 if you include that category. He's going to score. He his assists were better last year. Rebounding, I think, could see an uptick. Steals and blocks were a little bit better for Zion as well. And then he did finally, for the most part, stay healthy. You guys know me. I'm not a big punt free throw guy, although, like we talked about with Josh on Friday, I'll admit, if you end up with the 6th pick and you go Giannis, pairing him with Zion in this range makes you damn formidable in the big man categories. You just got to make sure you get your guards in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round in that type of build, and then go Zion in the 5th, and you're cooking. You are really cooking. D'Lo at 58. What the hell is he doing at 58? Yahoo, you've ruined my D'Angelo Russell plan. You son of a bee. He was number 65 last year. There's absolutely no reason why he should be getting drafted at 58 unless you are like beyond 100% certain that he's getting traded this year, which, by the way, I'm not sure of that. I don't think the Lakers want Jeremy Grant all that badly. I think they're targeting Kyle Kuzma or possibly Zach LaVine. But if you're going LaVine, you're locking up the checkbook for a while. And, who knows what pieces all of this would require. You could go Rui and then some other guys. D'Lo was an incredibly good fit for the Lakers during the regular season. I'm not convinced he's moving, and so I'm definitely not drafting him in the 50s. Mark Williams at 59, he'll go down in the next Yahoo board. I'll say that right now because nobody wants him because he missed 60 frickin' games last year with a back injury that had him doubtful from the first damn day of the year, basically. But Mark was really, really good when he was on the floor. He's not a bad foul shooter for a big man. He's a very good field goal percent guy. His role would likely increase if he shows he can healthy. Remember, he only played 27 minutes a game last season. He's their best center, and it's really not all that close, but he's got to be healthy. He's number 59 per game last year. It's exactly where he's pre-ranked, so you can kind of understand Yahoo just going, yeah, put him there. He has a path to get better, and that path is basically to play another 3 minutes a ball game. You add another 11, 12, 13% to what he was doing. He jumps around round and a half, but again, he's going to have to show he can be healthy. Still, you put him out there for another 10%. That's another rebound. That's another 1.5 points. That's more impact on the field goal percent in a big positive way, which outweighs, by the way, the negative in the free throw. That's another, steal or 10th of a steal and 10th of a block. These are big differences, by the way, if you're looking at rank numbers. My hope, though, of course, is that he drops around. And I don't see anybody drafting Mark Williams before 70. So my guess is he probably falls to 70 in their next pre-rank. But we'll see. We'll see. If he's going at 70, I'm taking him. If I got to take him at his mark from last year, I'm probably not. And if you're saying, Dan, you've said I'm not doing it for a lot of these guys, you're right. Like I said, this is my least favorite chunk of 25. Quickly, Brandon Ingram at 60. No. If he gets moved, sure. But that's a team that just added DeJounte Murray and basically sent away no usage. Larry Nance Jr., Dyson Daniels, those guys combined for 9 shots a game last year. You're bringing a guy that took 19 shots a game last season. Brandon Ingram's going to do less. And his value is 100% tied in getting more activity on offense. His defense is nothing special. He doesn't hit a ton of 3-pointers. His rebounding is fine, but nothing special. Turnovers are a little bit on the high side, but he's a positive field goal percent dude. He's a neutral free throw percent guy who's normally a little bit of a positive in scoring, positive in assists. You remove usage from Brandon Ingram, he falls frickin' fast. And I want nothing to do with him at 60. He's also not a punt guy because he's not atrocious at anything. It's not like you can be like, oh, well, I'm not really trying to win this particular category, so I'm going to go Brandon Ingram. Brandon Ingram's a guy you take if you're just trying to float all of your categories at once. So, nope. That's another nope for Brandon Ingram, who I forgot to highlight on the YouTube board. Hey, mid-show reminder, everybody, to please take a moment to like, rate, and subscribe. I know, sometimes it doesn't click right at the front end. You guys are sort of half listening. You're listening now. I also forgot to put a commercial break in earlier, so maybe we'll do one now? Sure, why not? So to recap the first 10, and again, we're moving a little bit quicker after a few of these names. We'll pause. I don't like many of them. Gobert at 52, I think, is very safe. Derek White at 53, I think, is pretty safe. Quickley is pretty safe there with a little bit of upside built in. DeRozan is safe, and I don't really like the rest of them. I know. You got to pick somebody, don't you, Dan? No, you don't, because you can go far down the board if you want. Let's go to the next 10. 61 through 70. Mikal Bridges at 61. I'm down with this one. I'm down to clown with Mikal Bridges. He was brutal in Brooklyn last year because his role changed to a role that he didn't belong in, which was gunner. I don't want Mikal Bridges taking 16 shots a ball game. I want Bridges taking, 13 better shots per game and getting a bunch of steals and some blocks and just being Phoenix. That's what I want. I want Phoenix Bridges. Is that so much to ask? I don't know that he's going to necessarily go back to Phoenix Bridges, but Phoenix Bridges was right around 50 typically per game, which is about a round better than this. I mean, you can look at all those COVID range years, 44, 54. He's hovering between there. Didn't score much, but field goal percent was 54, 50, 51, stuff like that. And then it fell by freaking 11%. That's just unacceptable. Bridges' value is tied up in efficiency, defensive stats, and just being, again, sort of a quiet, solid roto producer. That iteration of Bridges, who damn well is going to try to play an all 82, and Tibbs is going to play him 37 minutes a ball game because he's freaking durable, has a very good ceiling from that old version of himself. If he's out there and he's trying to chuck, which I don't see on New York, there's guys ahead of him in the pecking order. The fear, of course, is that the efficiency doesn't come back, that he's just this new thing. But I have a little bit of confidence that because the role was so different, he can get back to it. So I like Bridges at 61. Pascal Siakam at 62. Not a fan. Not a fan. He's number 78 last year, 75 range. We just talked about him on the Pacers show over the weekend. You know exactly what you're getting with Siakam. If you're punting free throws, he's a perfectly reasonable guy to take in this range. If you're not, I don't think that there's a way for him to beat this mark. 62 is his punt free throw value spot, and opposite. Michael Porter Jr. at 63 was a big surprise. I truly don't know what the hell he's doing here. He basically was never inside the top 65 this last year, floated between 70 and 80 the entire season. Very safe 70 to 80 range dude, but what the hell his pre-rank is doing at 65, I couldn't possibly guess. It's just not, this isn't him. What do they think he's going to do? Take KCP's shots? This is who he is. And that was with Jamal Murray missing 23 ball games this last year. If Jamal's healthy, Porter Jr. goes down. I for sure thought that MPJ was going to be sort of old man squad type where people were like, yeah, he scores okay, gets some rebounds, hits some threes, but doesn't really get defensive stats. Nothing is elite with him. Percentages are solid. He seemed like the kind of guy that would slip in drafts, and instead he's gone the other way. So, nope. Keegan Murray at 64. Yeah, you're killing me with this, Yahoo. I loved Keegan Murray last year. He was one of our top buy low candidates early in the season. He finished at number 60 in a very efficient Mikal Bridgian Phoenix era type of year with 15, 5.5, a steal, 0.8 blocks, 2.5 threes, good free throw percent, acceptable field goal percent. And yet, it does feel like he's a guy that with DeMar DeRozan coming to town, he's going to have to be fighting to still get his. Yes, Harrison Barnes is gone, but he took with him only 9 shots. There's more coming in than leaving, and Fox is going to lose a couple, and Monk is going to lose a little, and Sabonis is going to lose a little, and Keegan's going to lose a little. And Keegan needs not to be going in that opposite direction. A lot of his value is tied up in super low turnovers anyway, which, it's fine. 9-cat roto, that's a category I still like to win. But it's not like Keegan Murray was super elite in a bunch of things. His biggest positives were turnovers and threes. Keegan Murray makes me very nervous in this range. Julius Randle at 65. Man, I hate this 51 to 75 stretch. So last year, Julius Randle was number 127 on the year in 46 ball games. We know the Julius Randle experience, and it is a points league experience. He was number 71 the prior year on 19 shots a ball game. He averaged 25, 10, and 4 with 3 3-pointers while still posting horrible percentages. He was just so freaking good on the counting stats that it didn't matter. This past year, the rebounds were lower. The free throw, what was the big difference? I'm looking and I'm not seeing how obvious it was. 2.8 turnovers. Did that get worse? That went to 3.5, so that was a big one. Turnovers got uglier for Randle. The 10 rebounds went down to 9, but the 4 assists went up to 5. 25 points per game became 24. That's nominal. 0.8 combined defensive stats used to be 0.9. That's not that different. Field goal was 46. Free throw was 76. This last year, field goal was 47. Free throw was 78. Those actually got better. Yeah, it's not, on second thought, on closer inspection, these are loafers. It's not that obvious, actually, why Randle dropped 50 slots. Some of that's just because of how close the 75 to 125 players are all ranked. Down a point, down a board, but up an assist should kind of cancel each other out. Better percentages, so should have gone the other way, but horrible turnovers. That was certainly part of it. Let's just, for argument's sake, look at Randle while punting turnovers, and he does indeed jump from 127 to 66. So that's the real issue with him. Percentages got a little bit better. Still, that team also got better around him. So we should assume that 66 while punting free throws is probably about the high watermark for Julius. I don't think the counting stuff's getting better, but the turnovers might. So now you've got a weird decision on your hands. Are you punting turnovers and free throw percent? Are you punting? I got myself crisscrossed there. The other stuff could go either way, is I think the direction that I wanted to go with that thought process, and I got my wires switched around. Supposed to cut the green wire, Dan. I would assume points go down a little bit. Boards should stay about the same. Assists should stay about the same. Steals and blocks staying about the same. Field goal, free throw, we don't really know. Something between 44 and 47. And on free throw, something between 74 and 78. Turnovers, hard to say. I would assume they go lower. But if you're punting them, you don't really care that much anyway. That wasn't even really in the question. So this is a no for me at 65. The only way he gets there is if you're punting something, probably turnovers, and typically I am not. Yusuf Nurkic at 66 is another one that I'm not at all excited about for, I think, pretty obvious reasons. Nurk this last year was number 112. He was a punt free throw guy who moves up to 61 if you're punting foul shots. His other stuff was fine. 11 points, 11 boards, 4 assists, a steal, and a block, 51% from the field. That's all solid in those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 6 categories. So there are reasons to still like Nurk. But again, if you're not punting free throws, that takes him down a peg or two. I'm also a little bit worried. Nurk did this in 27 minutes this last season. What if 27 becomes 25.5? What if we take away 5%? Does that make this getting to this point almost impossible? If you're trying to win free throws, the answer is yes. It's impossible. If you're punting free throws, it's still potentially on the table. And he was also quite healthy last year, which can he replicate that? I don't know. That's coin flip, whatever. So not a big fan of Nurk here at 66. I think we've wiped out the damn upside on these guys. But Nurk is not going higher than this. Darius Garland, another situation where we're drafting players where we want them to be. Last year, Darius Garland was really bad. He was number 110, but a lot of that was the turnovers. He averaged over 3 a ball game, and for a lot of the season, he was up near 4. That managed to finally level off a little bit as the season went on. Punting turnovers, so 8 cat. Garland was 64. That's where he's being ranked here, 67. This is basically an 8 cat mark for him. I know assists are hard to come by as you get later, but there are guys that are going to get you around 6 assists later than Garland who are not going to turn it over 3 times a ball game. You don't have to go this route with him. And I know you get the 18 points and you get the decent steals mark as well. But it's just math, guys. It's just math. If you're an 8 cat, fine. Because maybe the field goal percent gets a little bit better. Maybe he scores a little bit better. There's ways that he could go from 18 to 19 or 20 points again. Like, there's ways for small improvement there. 8 cat, this is fine. 9 cat, it's just not. Devin Vassell at 68. We're finally at a player that I think is a pretty safe pick in this range. This is hard. Vassell only played 68 games last year. I do think the Spurs are going to try to compete more this season than they did last year. They were going a little bit easy on their regulars. Not that like 68, 69, 71. Those are the games played for the usual dudes. That's not like they took half the season off, but they didn't push them. And Wemby was on a minutes cap for a while. And anytime Vassell had a little nagging injury, they'd hold him out. I just think he's solid. He's solid. He ended up right around his ADP last season. I think he'll end up pretty close to his ADP this year again. And they've got a better set of point guards. You're not going to have half a season of Jeremy Sohan trying to run the point. You'll have Chris Paul doing it instead. And then Trey Jones can come in off the bench and also be a serviceable point guard. And for Vassell, when we saw more Trey Jones, he was actually around number 60. There's also room for improvement. Vassell shot 79% at the foul line last year. If that gets up to 81, it's not that hard to jump from number 60 to number 52 with 1 or 2 percentage points at the foul line. That's kind of all it would take. 20-point scorer, 4 board, 4 to 5 assists, over 2 3-pointers on okay percentages. Yeah, I'm good with Vassell there. Absolutely. Jalen Suggs at 69. I liked Jalen Suggs, but not at 69. He was number 114 the second half this last year. For the year, he was 102. The hope there is that he does more on offense. I don't know that I can guarantee that's going to happen because they have, Banchero and Wagner are going to be the guys that kind of dominate things, and Cole Anthony's still there. And, Fultz is gone, but he wasn't doing very much anyway. Is he unsigned still? They're just not enough things have changed where I can be like, yeah, Jalen Suggs, he's going to get another 2 shots per ball game. He might get like another 0.7 shots per game, which again, not that crazy, but he was hovering right around 9 pretty much the entire year. His value is tied up mostly in defensive stats. He's an excellent defender and happens to be also one that gets steals and blocks. He is, in my eyes, Suggs is a good foul stroke away from being Phoenix-era Mikal Bridges, basically. Slightly fewer rebounds, probably slightly more assists. That's the upside. So 60 range per game, but things have to break his way. Field goal percent has to be up near 50. Free throw is going to have to get up near 80. I don't know that I believe all those things are going to happen. So for Suggs, I was hoping to be able to go get him closer to 100. 70 was a surprising number and also a disappointing one. 6 players left to go on this one. Brandon Miller at number, 70. I'm a little more bearish than Miller on most. He was number 108 during the final 2 months last year when, again, it was basically just Brandon Miller and Miles Bridges versus the universe. He will do less with LaMelo Ball back. He will probably be more efficient. Do those things cancel each other out? Yeah, possibly. I will say I don't hate Brandon Miller at 70, but I also don't really like it. I don't think he's safe here. I think he's got a pretty safe, like 110 range floor. But I think I'd rather go a different direction. Someone that has, a little bit more, I'm going to say upside built in because, there is some there. But if that team is healthy, Miller's probably getting 15 shots or less. LaMelo's going to get his ton, and then Bridges and Miller are going to kind of be fighting over some of the other stuff. And, he's not a great defensive stats dude, so that's not going to be the elite thing. He's not a particularly good rebounder. Doesn't pass much. It's mostly threes and a good free throw percent. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something obvious, but it kind of feels like he has a shooting guard's fantasy profile in a forward's body. So probably I'll pass there. Zach LaVine at 71. I would love, and again, we just talked about him on the Bulls show yesterday. I would love to have any kind of clarity on LaVine before we consider drafting him at all. The nice thing is, if we know he's playing, his floor is 80. There's no way he's worse than that. But we don't know he's playing. So I like Zach LaVine here with a little bit of information. So this one's kind of we'll wait and see a little bit longer, but I'm leaning towards I'm okay with it. Arguably, the player on the Yahoo pre-rank board that made me the saddest was Jonas Valanciunas being at 72. I didn't think there was a chance he was going to be pre-ranked inside 85. I thought JV was going to be one of the easiest old man squad calls on planet Earth. But at 72, he's actually not that easy of a call. Basically, we need to guarantee he's getting 25 minutes now, which wasn't the case if he was getting drafted at 90. That was hell, he can do it in 23, 22, 23 minutes. That would have been an easy call. I don't know for sure that JV is going to get 25 minutes a ball game in Washington. They have Bagley, they have Holmes, they have young dudes, they have Kuzma at the 4, but where are they going to play Sarr? There's a little bit of a jam up, especially for a dude who likely signed in Washington to go prove he's got game and then get traded. How much are they going to run him? So JV, I don't like that much at 72. I loved him in the 90s or later, and I'm a little worried about going his direction at 72. I feel very fortunate that I got him at 90-something in that mock draft, Josh's mock draft from Friday, or Thursday, I guess, the one we talked about on Friday. But Yahoo's got him early. They were listening to us. They did it. They got us. The beautiful thing about Valanciunas is if he gets those 25 minutes, he's a lock. But we just don't know. We just don't know. So all I can say is piss. Don't want him at 72. CJ McCollum at 73. We're back in New Orleans where I don't trust anybody. McCollum last year was obviously very good. He was number 38. He stuck in the late teens, early 20s for a while. Second half of the season, he slowed down a little bit. He was number 53 over that stretch. Now you put DeJounte Murray in the mix, who pretty much just runs over CJ in kind of the where are these guys playing on the floor standpoint. 70s is probably relatively safe for McCollum. I don't think there's a whole lot of upside here, but I also think you're getting a safe floor dude. So I don't hate it. I'm okay with CJ at 73. I think he probably falls a little later than that, and I'm not targeting Pelicans this year, but I'm okay with it. Jordan Poole at 74, I think is worth a try this season. I'm not hyper excited about it because Poole was 116 over the last 3 months last year. Once guys started to fade, Kuzma started to sit some games. Jones, Tyus started to sit some games. Then you saw Poole launch himself forward a little bit because the assists got better. The I'm going to chuck away got better. And then he landed sort of in the 70 range. This is probably still too early for Poole in 9-cat roto. However, if you're punting field goal percent or turnovers or potentially some combination of those things, then I think Poole is a really good pick in this range. So you know your team better than I do. Straight 9-cat roto. Poole's still not a guy that I'm going for. And neither is Tyler Hero, the last name in this 51 through 75 range. I saw some tweets kicking around about, how great Hero was the first couple months of last year. I'm like, yeah, but you should be looking at the end of the year. And when the Heat were mostly healthy, aside from basically Hero himself, Tyler was number 152. He was the prototypical shooting guard's fantasy stat line, which is decent points and threes, a little bit of assisting, decent free throw numbers, bad field goal, and then not much in the way of defensive stats. Now, Hero had something happen during the second half of this last year that I don't think even on his worst 3 months he'd be able to replicate. And that was he basically just didn't get a steal for like 2 straight months. The game log for Hero after like January, like call it the end of January, was crazy. February, he did not have a steal. Let's see how many games we can go without one. Well, he didn't have a steal because he played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games in February and then got hurt for a while. Didn't come back until early April and got 1 steal in 6 games in April. So there was a stretch there, and that was actually the rest of the season. So there was a stretch where, admittedly, he only played 13 ball games, where he had 1 steal in 13 games. That's hard to do. Even for guys that don't get defensive stats, that's hard to do. Typically with Hero, you're going to get about 0.6, 0.7 steals in starters minutes. It's not going to be 0.2, and that artificially lowered his rank from this past season. If you raise his steals from 0.2 up to 0.7, he's obviously no longer number 150, but he's also hovering more near the edge of the top 100 because that's where these shooting guards end up. He's also going to be dealing with Butler, Adebayo, Rozier, a freshly surging Jaime Jaquez, who I don't think is going to do much usage-wise, but there are just more dudes there. Mostly Rozier. That's the big change. So he has another guy who pretty much does the exact same things as him. Their fantasy games are the same. They're the same. Rozier, a little bit better steals and blocks, and Hero, a tiny bit better field goal percent. Everything else is almost exactly the same. It's crazy. Does that mean they do the exact same things for the team on the court? I mean, sort of. But that's why I don't want Hero. I just unless half the team gets hurt, he's a 90 range dude. I don't want to take a 90 range dude at 75 unless I absolutely have to. And that is where we will put a pin in things. I keep thinking the rank board's about to change, and it continues to not change, at least for now. At some point, it will. If it doesn't, then we will at some point get 76 through 100, but I haven't decided exactly when that's going to happen. So here's what's coming up on the show while I once again remind you guys to like, rate, and subscribe however you're taking in the show, especially folks on Apple. I need you guys to drop those 5-star reviews. Later today, exciting news. We'll have my good buddy Adam King back on the show for the first time in a very long while. We'll be breaking down Adam's team from Josh's mock, which, as I pull up the results very quickly on air, that is a Trae Young build. You guys will be very interested in that. He also ended up with Immanuel Quickley and Cade Cunningham on that team. So we'll have some really cool thoughts on a Trae Young build out of the 11 spot. That'll be with Adam King later on today. Tomorrow, we're going to talk to Noah Rubin. He was not in that mock draft, so we can take a look more at the board overall for Noah. He's also a dynasty guy, so we can sprinkle in a little bit of the dynasty stuff. Remember what the guest situation looks like for this week. Jacob Dunn from my former landing spot, Sports Ethos. He'll get us some points league winners in the middle of the week. I believe we'll have Dan Palio on Friday's show. And then in between that, because we're basically trying to do 2 shows every day right now during the week, we'll cover the 76 to 100 range at some point. If the board changes, we'll cover that. We'll have some other draft and mock results to go over interspersed between that. I'm asking if you guys, by the way, have a draft result so far, please submit that, because if I find it interesting, I'll do a freaking show on it. Why the hell not? Real draft results right now are way more interesting than, I mean, an expert mock was cool, but like regular old mock with randos, that's not that helpful. Yahoo mocks, by the way, open in 3 days. So on Thursday, if those are indeed open, we'll probably do one of those on a show. We got a lot to do. Plus, we still have the entire Atlantic division to go over in team previews. A lot to cover, 2 months and change to do it. Thanks for watching, everybody. I am Dan Vespers at Dan Vespers for Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. That is also Old Man Squad on social media. Again, please like the thing. Subscribe to the thing. It actually really does mean like a lot. Do it. And we'll talk to you guys later on today with my buddy Adam King. So long for now.